Hey, it's your guy Tyrrell back with the interviews. In today's video, we're going to briefly analyze how Diaz and Konrad Laimer's left-sided rotations represented the key tactical theme in Bayern Munich's comfortable 4-0 win over Club Brugge in UEFA Champions League action. So when you break it all down, you do look at the board, you have Bayern in a 4-2-3-1 against the Club Brugge side that did drop off into a 4-1-4-1. And what we noticed here from Bayern was that there were some changes to their starting 11, with Rafael Guerreiro playing at right back and Lennart Karl starting in a more advanced central role just in behind Harry Kane. So when you identify both shapes, what's clear here is that the away side could go 3v3 in that midfield zone. They could have their shuttlers stepping forward to close down Kimmich and Pavlovic, and then you could have Stankovic occupying the movement of Karl. With Karl often moving into more advanced positions, there were times where you often saw the left center back having to step towards him, and then with Kane often looking to drop deeper, now they have a marker to close down Kane when he pushed in towards those zones. In terms of the slight modifications from Bayern tactically, what we often witness this season is that one of the central midfielders does shift in towards the half spaces on the outside of the center backs, but here both Kimmich and Pavlovic were often in central areas, and that could drag the two shuttlers towards them from the away side, and then you'd see aggressive movement from the two fullbacks inverting, with Rafael Guerreiro constantly driving the left-sided attacking wide player into more defensive positions in his own third, whereas Laimer was making underlapping vertical runs from deeper positions in towards the final third as well. Ultimately, the difference between Laimer and Guerreiro's movement was that Guerreiro was dragging away the away side's left-sided attacking player in towards his own third, and that was creating space for Olise and Karl to receive the ball, and there were several examples where you could see Guerreiro dragging him across the pitch, whereas Laimer's movement wasn't being tracked, and what ended up happening was that he ended up being a key outlet for Bayern Munich to create chances down that left-hand side because Carlos Forbes wasn't tracking his movement. A lot of that was down to the away side shape out of possession and how they looked to press, and they often had their right-sided attacking player in more narrow positions to help them remain compact and to ensure that Bayern couldn't play through the midfield zone, but there were times where he was also looking to apply pressure towards Jonathan Tah while attempting to block off the passing lane in towards Laimer, but that ultimately created space for the left back to receive the ball and make vertical runs whenever the ball was switched out to Diaz. However, in the early stages, Diaz was very patient when he received the ball, and he wasn't looking to constantly play in Laimer, breaking it towards that space. And it even came down to a point where there was a time where Kimmich shifted the ball out towards Diaz, and you had Laimer running freely off his marker in towards the penalty area, and Diaz opted for a cross through the penalty area that was clear, and there were no runners even breaking in towards that penalty area when he could have simply played the ball in towards Laimer. However, that seemed to be Bayern's best tripod across the pitch. It would be Kane shifting over towards that side to help serve as an outlet for Diaz and Laimer, and what was evident here was that they all had their roles. Laimer's hard running created space and dragged away markers, or he was exploiting space with his running, and then Diaz on the ball offered finishing and creativity when he looked to play in Laimer or Kane. In the early stages of that game, they were involved in some of Bayern's better movements, whether it be Laimer on the overlapping run and receiving the ball from Diaz in left half space and simply failing to get the pullback towards Kane, or a simple ball around the wide attacking right-sided player for Laimer, and Laimer receiving that ball in the final third and scoring it instantly in towards Kane, and Kane locating the movement of Diaz, making a diagonal run in towards left half space, and in that situation, Kane and Diaz simply failed to connect, and Diaz wasted a golden opportunity. And there was even moments where Laimer served as a legitimate goal threat, dragging away Carlos Forbes towards the edge of the area, where he was able to receive the ball from Pavlovic and spin away from pressure to get the ball into left half space. However, the issue here was that when he pushed the ball towards his left foot to gain a yard of space from the center back was able to get across to block his effort. So as you can see, there was a reoccurring theme here down that left-hand side where it'd be Diaz dragging away the fullback to receive the ball, and Laimer running off his marker to make underlapping runs to attempt to create overloads. And when you break down the build-up to the second and the third goal, they followed a similar template. The first one witnessed Laimer sliding the ball out towards Diaz and dragging away the fullback, and then it's Laimer running off Carlos Forbes to make a run in towards left half space. Diaz finally plays the ball in towards him, and you end up seeing Laimer dragging up the center back and playing a first-time ball across the 6-yard area for Harry Kane breaking towards the back back post freely for a simple tap-in. And then in the build-up to the third goal, you see 2v2 down the left-hand side. It's Laimer carrying the ball and dragging out Carlos Forbes, and then breaking a challenge from the wide attacking player and sliding the ball out towards Diaz. When Diaz receives the ball, he drags away Forbes, and Laimer continues his run down that left channel. And when Laimer receives the ball, he lets it go across his body. Diaz breaks towards the penalty area, and you could see that Carlos Forbes ends up tracking the ball rather than Diaz, and Laimer identifies that as well, so he ends up playing a first-time pullback in towards Diaz, who can now run at the center back, and he has the option to pull the ball back to Kane, but he ends up firing a great effort from a tight angle bar down. So as you can see, this was a big issue for Club Brugge throughout that opening half, as they could never get 1v2 against Luis Diaz, and Laimer's constant movement dragged out Carlos Forbes and forced him to track him in towards the final third, and ultimately his positioning ensured that Diaz could get 1v1s, and when he was able to get them and drag the ball in towards the penalty area, he caused danger. But for the most part, their issue here was that Laimer's running often gave them an overload down that left-hand side, and it was just down to when they were looking to play it, and that forced Club Brugge to make substitutions in that second half, and we did see an improvement down that left-hand side. However, it was still a combination of Laimer and Diaz combining, or Diaz's on-ball ability to create and finish, that caused issues for this Club Brugge side. But even when you isolate two separate scenarios, one ends up seeing Karl dropping in towards his own half and switching out the ball towards Diaz, and that's when you witness Diaz, Kane, and Laimer breaking towards the penalty area. And what Laimer does well here is that he drags away his marker by making an inverted run towards the byline, and that sees Diaz also drag the ball towards the byline as well. They drag away two defenders, and it creates space for Kane to receive the ball in the 6-yard area. And while Diaz does a very good job of fizzing the ball in towards that zone, it's a last-ditch tackle from the center back that clears the lines. And then in the build-up to the fourth goal, it's Laimer switching towards the right back zone, and Diaz identifying him free in that area and switching the ball out towards Laimer, and that's where Laimer's now able to carry the ball in towards the final third, slide it out towards Olise, and then he continues his run in towards the penalty area that's not tracked. Olise identifies that and plays the ball in towards that zone, and although Laimer can't make good contact with the ball, he ends up guiding it in towards the path of a free Nicolas Jackson at the back post, and Jackson's able to convert from point blank range. So as you can see, while this was a comfortable outing for Vincent Kompany's men that witnessed slight tactical modifications to their build-up shape, a combination of Bayern's trusted left-sided rotations proved decisive through Laimer's running and Diaz's on-ball production in the final third.